Howdy folks, I'm Mike Freeman. This is historic Adams Mill, a painstakingly restored 19th century grist mill and covered bridge complex located just outside of Cutler, Indiana. In this episode, we're going to go back to basics with an all-American classic made by backyard pitmasters nationwide. Barbecue spare ribs, today on Fat Mike's Pit. Nothing says good old American barbecue like spare ribs. Now, I can't tell you the who, what, when, and where of this mouth-watering cut of meat, but I can share with you the origins of the name. The term spare rib is a curious one. Obviously, it does not refer to extra ribs, so why do we call them spare ribs? The term actually comes from the German Ribbespeer, which literally translates to spear ribs, as this cut was traditionally roasted on a spit or spear. When the word was translated into English, spear was confused with the term spare, as in lean or thin, and the term spare rib was born. Spare ribs are cut from the bottom section of the ribs and breastbone of the pig, just above the belly, which is the part that bacon is cut from. Don't confuse these with baby back ribs. Baby back ribs are cut from the top of the rib area along the back. While baby backs are good eats in their own right, when it comes to flavor, tenderness, and meatiness, spare ribs are considered to be the more succulent of the two. Despite their iconic status in American barbecue, ribs are not exclusive to the United States. They are very popular in Asian dishes, especially Chinese cooking. In Chinese cuisine, pork spare ribs are generally first cut into 3 to 4 inch sections, and then they may be fried, steamed, or braised. In the Cantonese cuisine of southern China, spare ribs are generally roasted with a sweet and savory sauce. This preparation of spare ribs is grouped as one of the most common items of su mei, which are a variety of Cantonese roasted meat dishes. Nonetheless, the pork spare rib has been raised to a most honorable position in American barbecue fare. This dish is a favorite of backyard pitmasters across the fruited plain and has even spawned an entire industry dedicated to competition cooking centered around this particular cut. Not only that, but we even pay homage to the spare rib with a national holiday in their honor. National Barbecue Spare Ribs Day is observed across the nation annually on July 4th. Now that you've had a bite of the history of spare ribs, let's get over to the pit and I'll show you how I make this tongue-popping barbecue classic.
Hey folks, welcome to the pit. Today we're going to be cooking up some spare ribs, low and slow on the smoker. Now if you've never slow smoked spare ribs before, you've got to give this a try. Here we've got 2 full racks of spare ribs. Now before we get these rubbed and put on the smoker, we're going to trim them up a bit. And there's several different ways to trim up spare ribs, but my favorite is Kansas City style. Now in all honesty, these can be cooked just as they are if you like. However, you're not going to get your best ribs that way. First of all is this end piece here. If you leave this on, I guarantee that it's going to burn. So we're going to trim this off. For this cut, feel the rack to find the last rib. It'll be a few inches in from the end. Once you've found it, make a little indentation in the meat about a ½ inch past the bone to mark your spot. Now put your knife in the middle of that indentation and make your cut. Don't throw this piece away. Once you get enough of these, they're great for cooking on the grill. Next, we want to cut off the skirt. The skirt is this flap of meat that overlaps the rib bones. You can leave it on, but I prefer to cut this off and save it for later. It's great for sausage or stir fry. To trim it off, lift it up and just run the edge of your knife right along where the skirt attaches to the rack. Next thing we need to address is this membrane that covers the ribs. There's a trick to getting this off of here without using a lot of cussing, usually, and all you need is a butter knife and some paper towel. Use your butter knife to get up under the bottom corner of the membrane and peel it up so you have something to grab onto. Get yourself a piece of paper towel, grab the corner of the membrane and strip it right off the bones. It'll rarely come off in one piece, so just keep working on it to get it off of there. It's all right if you don't get every last bit of the membrane off of there, just get as much as you can. Okay, this rack is finished. I'm going to trim up the other one and then we'll be ready to rub these up and get them on the smoker. These ribs are ready to get some flavor on. First thing you want to do is put something on these to make sure the rub sticks to the ribs. Of course, you use whatever you want, but I like to use plain yellow mustard. Just squeeze some out on the ribs from end to end. Now get yourself a basting brush and spread it out until you have a nice thin layer covering the entire rack. Here I've got some of Fat Mike's Hoosier Rub. Again, you can use whatever you want. There are a lot of great off-the-shelf rubs out there, or you can make your own. Use as much or as little as you want on your ribs. I generally put a pretty generous coating on mine. Once you've got it on there, gently rub it into the meat. Alright, now let's flip these over to the bone side and do the same thing. Now I don't bother putting rub on the exposed bone. That's just going to be a waste of good rub. Just cover the meat. Alright, we've got a nice smoky fire smoldering in the firebox of our barrel smoker. This has been going for about 45 minutes and we've got the cooking chamber preheated to about 225 degrees. Now I'm going to use what's called the 3-2-1 method to cook these ribs. You'll see how this works as the video progresses. All in all, this method takes 6 hours to complete. Alright, we'll see these ribs again in about 45 minutes. Here I've got a mixture called a mop. This particular mop is about 1.5 cups of OJ, a 12-ounce can of beer, and some crushed red pepper flakes. I'm using a basting mop to apply this, but you could just as easily use a spray bottle. Just make sure you get a generous amount of mop on these ribs so they don't dry out. If you use a basting mop or brush, just dab it on there so you don't wipe the rub off. You'll want to do this every 45 minutes until we get to the next stage. Okay, an hour and a half in, and we're going to turn these racks so they cook evenly. Now we'll apply some more mop. I think you've got the idea of what we're doing here, so you won't see these again until we hit the 3-hour mark. Alright, we're at the 3-hour mark and it's time to enter the next phase of the 3-2-1 method. Pull the racks off of the grate and put each of them on their own piece of aluminum foil that's large enough to wrap around the rack of ribs. You can wrap them up just like this if you want, but just hold on, I want to show you how I do it. Alright, I pulled the first rack off of the grate. The first thing we're going to do is put some more mop on there. Now we're going to put a few pats of butter along the top, just to set them on top of the meat, no need to spread it out. Now here we've got some honey. Just drizzle some all over the top. Use whatever seems right to you. Again, don't worry about spreading it, just drizzle it on. Alright, now wrap it up in the foil and put it back on the grate. We're going to cook these like this for 2 hours. Two hours later, and these racks are ready for the next stage. You could eat these now if you want, but let's add a little finishing touches onto these. We've waited this long, what's another hour going to hurt? Now just close up the lid and we'll be back in a half hour to sauce them up. Alright, it's time to put some sauce on these ribs. Now I'm putting some Fat Mike's sweet and tangy barbecue sauce on these ribs, but you use whatever sauce fits your taste. Put on whatever looks good to you and brush it out until you have a thin coat all over the ribs. Another half hour and these will be done. Ooh, look at that. These ribs are done. Let me get these off here and I'll give you a better look. Alright, let's get a taste of these. Oh, that meat is tender, but you can still sink your teeth into it, and it just strips right off the bone. A nice meaty chew combined with that rich smoky flavor and a little bit of heat from the red peppers is straight out of hog heaven. You've just got to try these ribs. And that leaves only one thing left to say.